The last thing we wanted to talk about was a post by Justine Moore, who's an investment partner at a16z. She posted on LinkedIn that Andreessen Horowitz have spent all day, spend all their days studying the future of consumer AI, and they wanted to share their latest thinking. Now, if you don't know who Andreessen Horowitz, or otherwise known as a16z, is, then you're living under a rock. They're one of the top VC firms in the world. They've created massive, massive companies and massive value for the world. And these guys really know their stuff. And, they've been thinking about the future of consumer AI. And I wanted to just read out some of these and we can react to them quickly and share our thoughts. And then you can check out the full article in the show notes below. The first thing that Justine shared in her post is, now is the time for consumer apps. Models are mature enough across modalities, audio, image, video, to build apps on top of, and they're available open source or via API. So she's saying now's the time for consumer AI apps. What do you think about this, Yaniv?
Yeah, look, I completely agree. And this is part of that theme that AI is only getting better and cheaper, that the cost per intelligence, which is a term I really like, keeps plummeting. And actually, there was a news item today. We decided not to make a full segment out of it, but OpenAI, just a few hours ago at the time of recording, announced that O3, which is their premium reasoning model, so that top model, they've cut the cost of that by 80%. 80% just today. And so what happens is via API, you are getting access to more and more intelligence at lower and lower cost. And we're already at such a strong level, right, where these AI tools can really act a lot more reliably and predictably than you would think, and really cleverly. And I'm actually playing with a bunch of stuff now to make a consumer app using these AI models. And so what you have to understand is that if you build now using those tools, by the time you reach some maturity, by the time you have product market fit and are starting to grow, the underlying models are just going to be even better and cheaper, right? So you've got this rising tide lifts all boats phenomenon where your product will be better as your margins get higher. It's an incredible place to be. And so I absolutely agree that you can do things that seem pretty magical pretty quickly for consumer apps now using these AI models. So it is time to go.
They're ready to scale. They work well enough. I think so. The second point she made was, however, most consumer AI tools are not capturing the social and sharing behavior. Right now, what's happening is if you create a cool AI image, for example, you share it on the legacy social sites like X or Reddit or Facebook, not on the tool where you made it. And I think this is a huge, huge opportunity. I think there is a new crop, a new breed of consumer social apps that is possible today. In fact, I'm advising a couple of them. There was this period of time around when the Uber on-demand economy came out where social was just not cool anymore. No one was going to build a new social app or fund a new social app. But I think that's changed. I think there are new kinds of apps that are possible. There are new kinds of behavior that people want from their apps. Many of these behaviors are more in real life social or closed or private social. And I think AI changes the nature of the social objects and the behaviors within these social ecosystems. And so I do think there is an opportunity for a new crop of social apps powered by, in response to, or limiting the use of AI. All three. And that those opportunities are explicitly as a result of generative AI. And those opportunities are directly as a result of generative AI.
Look, you've obviously thought more deeply about this than I have, Chris. I'm not personally convinced. Well, first of all, I can't think of any existing company that didn't start off as a social company, as a social networking company that has built a successful social network, right? It's either they've always started as social networks or they've acquired them. And of course, I've been traumatized by the whole Google Plus thing that I lived through. So, but if I think about it, I can't think of any other social network that has been successful when created by an established company. And so what that means is that the big AI players are not going to be successful in creating a social network, in my view. So then what that leaves is, okay, can a small consumer company somehow leverage AI or the capabilities of AI to create a unique type of social network? Maybe, but I don't think it's easy. And in the same way that it's very hard to break into the Magnificent Seven, like, will there ever be a new search engine to compete with Google? Maybe it's Perplexity, but boy, they've got an uphill battle. Will there ever be a new social network to compete with Facebook's suite of services, with X and LinkedIn? I don't know. It's going to be really hard. But of course, AI does present an opportunity. I don't think it's an easy one.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying the opportunity is for the large tech companies. I'm saying it's the opportunity for small startups. And I'm not necessarily saying these startups are going to grow to compete with Facebook. They might ultimately get acquired by Facebook or coexist with Facebook. The same way that, Craigslist was stripped category by category by category, and massive companies were built in its shadow. So I think you can strip mine Facebook for all of its behaviors and its moments and its opportunities, and you can create really compelling social experiences that live in the shadow of Facebook. And as I said, I think AI presents an opportunity both because you might use it in smarter ways to create new, interesting social objects and behaviors, or you might create areas that are or spaces that are AI free for more authentic and human connection. So I think there's an opportunity for startups here. And I actually think it's an opportunity that's defensible, because if you've been listening to the show for a while, you'll know that part of my thesis is the foundation models will create a lot of software on the fly, which maybe mitigates or invalidates some opportunity for SaaS, except where there is massive multiplayer games or moving assets in the real world. And social networks are massive multiplayer games. So I think they're actually, if they achieve critical mass, quite defensible in an AI world. The next insight that she shared was that AI companies have higher quality business models than the last generation of consumer apps, because people are willing to pay and you don't have to wait to monetize eyeballs at scale with ads or transactions later.
Hard agree on that one. And, we've discussed this on the podcast as well. I think it's incredible. A lot of people have said that ads are the original sin of the internet, and AI seems to be avoiding that one. People have been conditioned over many years of using services like Netflix and goodness knows what, that if it's a high value service, they pay a monthly subscription fee. And the way that AI companies have jumped straight into that, possibly out of necessity, but nonetheless does create this much firmer foundation, a much more solid consumer aligned business model, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. There's just a lot more ways to monetize and monetize at lower scales. So very, very exciting. So this next one I like a lot. Bullet number 4 she has here is viral consumer growth leads to enterprise adoption. Buyers at companies have a mandate for an AI strategy to unlock efficiency, and they're learning about products on X and Reddit and LinkedIn and newsletters. I would add to that they're learning about products by just using them and bringing them into their enterprise. And I think this has been true for years. Slack and Atlassian and Google and whatever. These are not companies that have not had an enterprise sales first strategy for go to market. They have enterprise sales teams, but that's not their primary way to go to market. Their primary way to go to market is product led, PLG. And so people pick it up and use it despite their corporate IT or in their personal lives. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, their team is using it. The next thing you know, their department's using it. The next thing you know, the whole company is riddled with the shit. I think that's going to be true of the next generation of AI tools as well. And I'm constantly pushing my companies that I advise in this direction. They're off trying to build all the enterprise features, enterprise sales, and try to convince the IT department and procurement department to buy things that are underbaked and over engineered. My guys, just build something for people, human beings with a problem. Focus on the people, and the people will use it, and they will adopt it, and they will spread it amongst their team. And by the time it's too late, you'll start adding, enterprise features for the enterprise IT department. Often they're trying to split the difference, and they do some features for the users and some features for the customer, the buyer, and they end up building shit for both that nobody wants to use. So yes, this is a long time trend. Go for real utility, go for real adoption, go for real joy and solving problems for the end user. That will hopefully result in a viral growth trajectory or some sort of hockey stick curve, and then you'll be carried through to the enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about PLG, this is nothing new, right? Create a product, get people to adopt it personally, and then eventually you get enterprise adoption. The way this was written, viral consumer growth leads to enterprise adoption, I don't quite agree with that, right? Because what we're still talking about is productivity tools, right? Like if you create a cool new tool for consumers, this doesn't mean it's a useful enterprise tool. But if you think about our coding tools like Cursor or Windsurf or so on, they're so powerful. Developers naturally go to them to see what they're like. And then suddenly the CTO turns around, half their team are using this stuff unauthorized. And then that just becomes a question of aligning internal policy, getting an enterprise sales team in, and then Bob's your uncle. So yes, I think if I rephrase this as AI tools are very well suited for product-led growth. I would completely agree with that.
Yeah, I would say venture scale internet powered companies are not just aligned with, but thrive in product led growth. And I really, that's my religion. So if you're not doing that well, get on it.
Okay, now the next one which we wanted to talk about is number 5. Today's consumer AI companies can better monetize the whales than the last gen. Many tools charge you for the base subscription and can then upsell heavy users on additional credit. I think this is really interesting. And I wanted to use the analogy of oil, actually, Chris. I think a lot of people talk about this is the new oil and that is the new oil. Even in the case of AI, data is the new oil. But I would actually like to make the case that it is tokens and AI compute that is the new oil. And I think there's a particularly interesting thing here, right? Which is when you think about what really drove the growth of the oil industry, it is things like the automobile and the plane and so on, the consumption uses of that oil. And what I think that these AI consumer companies have that previous generations of companies didn't have in the same way is a consumable. And that is really powerful. Think about the Gillette model. Sell the stick at a loss and then make up all your money in the razor blades. And so when you have this really valuable, necessary consumable that is a variable use, you can then add margin and add revenue by selling refills and extra credits and so on. That's something you couldn't really do with with Notion or these previous SaaS tools. And so the fact that you can sell the car and then you can sell the petrol as well, I think is a really powerful model. And again, just drives the size of this total economy a whole lot more.
Yaniv, I think that is both a brilliant observation and I disagree with it. Let me explain why. I think that is brilliant and I think it's true right now. But I think it's like selling S3 bucket storage or, EC2 compute back in the day. I think what's going to happen is the cost of intelligence is going to go to zero, nearly zero. People are going to figure out the adoption curves and the price buckets, and they're going to basically bury the costs in subscription plans or whatever. I don't know that we as software developers want to keep exposing the underlying input costs for the software. Now, could be wrong there, but
well, here's where I disagree with you. I don't know if compute costs are dropping anywhere close to zero. I think the difference here is that there is a real cost to the business. Like, would car companies like to be able to sell a car that never runs on, that you never have to buy the petrol for, right? That is somehow just bundled in with the cost of the car. Of course they could, but the consumable has a real cost. Now, this is an imperfect analogy, right? The consumable has a real cost.
It has a cost today, though. What's that old joke, which is Bill Gates said to the car executive, "Hey, we've accelerated our product by thousands of X and increased its productivity by whatever. Why can't you guys do that in your car company?" And the car exec says, "Yeah, but then our cars would crash all the time."
Yeah.
Like the point is software doesn't react like cars, right? There is no digging shit out of the ground and refining it. We can get it closer to zero, right? Or at least predictably.
Yeah. Well, the question is, my feeling is that this intelligence is so valuable that the cheaper it gets, the more of it people will use to the point where they'll actually end up spending more. And that's the famous Jevons paradox that's been talked about quite a lot lately. More tokens, more interaction, larger context windows. The more stuff I can throw into this thing to get better quality results, the better. So it's nearly like the cheaper these tools become, the cheaper the intelligence becomes, the more of that intelligence I want to use, and the value of it to me goes up. So I'll spend $100, $200, $500, $1,000 a month on this intelligence if it makes me 10x more productive, if it grows my business at an incredible rate. And I will consume vast amounts of tokens out of foundation models to get that.
Yeah, I don't think we're disagreeing. I think we're talking about something slightly different. So I agree with you that the value of the intelligence is going to go up and the pervasiveness of the intelligence is going to go up and we're all going to use more intelligence more of the time. And the intelligence itself will be more effective. Agreed. What I'm saying is that the cost will also continue to precipitously drop such that it becomes more or less like generalized compute or storage. And or the software companies will get better at pricing it such that it becomes a hidden input cost, not a cost that is exposed in the form of credits or usage limits to the end user. The only places that you see usage limits in traditional software, internet software today, is sort of like Google's and Dropbox's storage limits on Gmail and Google Drive and Google Photos, because storage of that much data still costs a lot of money. But you don't see storage limits on like Asana or Slack because the storage is nearly free, and they've figured out what the curve is, the usage curve, and they kind of bundle it into the pricing. You're not thinking about the storage limits day to day.
Yeah.
And I think similarly, in the fullness of time, you're not going to be thinking about the token limits. Similarly, in the fullness of time, I don't think that the token limits are going to be as exposed as often for most applications most of the time.
Okay, I disagree with you, but I guess we will see what the future brings.
We'll see when you're wrong. It's fine. All right. So the last one we want to talk about was the only way to build a moat is to keep shipping. Product velocity is everything. AI is moving so quickly that people always want the latest, greatest product, and shipping supercharges distribution. So, I don't necessarily agree that the only moat is shipping. I think you need to build network effects, and you need to build, brand equity. You need to build, various flywheels and so on. But I do think that shipping fast, shipping velocity is a moat and it's not only a moat, it's a life or death strategy because the underlying foundation models are eating your lunch every single month. And so, yes, you have to ship fast, fast, fast. There's no time to fuck around.
Yeah. Well, my observation here is she's actually broken the metaphor. What this is actually saying is it's much harder to have a moat. So you better keep moving. Don't build a fucking castle with a moat around it. You got to stay on the move, stay ahead of your competition, because that's the only way you're going to be able to stay safe and build a successful, durable business.
All right. Well, that is Justine Moore's post summarizing their podcast from Andreessen Horowitz and all the thinking they've done on consumer apps. I think some interesting anecdotes there. I don't think anything was particularly earth-shattering, but I wanted to make sure we cover it. We'll put a link in the show notes so you can go check it out for yourself. Leave a comment on the post and let them know you heard about it from our show. It'll help spread the word.
Yes, do that.
All right, everybody. Well, that's our thoughts on the post and on the future of consumer AI. And reacting to Justine's post. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll join you down there for the discussion.